This week's theme is some of the music of the Beatles and a very short overview. They're such a significant group, it's not possible to do them justice in a few slides. One of their early names was the Quarrymen because they attended Quarrybank High School in Liverpool. John Lennon was the originator of the band called the Quarrymen and quickly invited Paul McCartney to join them. Paul and John had a very personal connection since both of them had lost their mothers at a very young age. Paul had a friend named George Harrison who was a bit younger, and John originally felt that he was too young to be in a proper rock band, but he wowed them with his musical skills and was able to join the band, being the youngest of the Quarrymen and ultimately the youngest of the Beatles. They changed their name eventually to the Beatles, and by 1962 received a record contract from one of the largest recording companies in the world at the time, EMI Records. It's also the same year that they obtained a new drummer named Ringo Starr, and he is pictured in the center of the picture sitting on the chair. In England, even before getting to the United States, the girls went nuts and crazy over these four guys from Liverpool. The term Beatlemania refers to the screaming fans that would chase the boys down the street and even pull at their clothing and hair if they were given the opportunity. This is also the time that their matching suits and hair, specific Beatle haircuts, started to define that early look. They also were unique in that they wrote many of their own songs, which gave them an edge as a different sound and a little more unique than the other British invasion bands. In 1964, they came to the United States for the first time. They weren't sure how they would be received. We were and still are the popular music capital of the world. And it's how are we going to accept a bunch of guys from Liverpool, England in our popular music scene in the United States? Well, it was a very welcome reception. In fact, the authorities in New York, when they flew into the airport, underestimated the size of the crowds that showed up to welcome the Beatles here. It was also the same first trip where they were on the Ed Sullivan Show, the famous television variety show. And in 1964, April of that year, all 5 top songs in the United States were Beatles songs. This is something no other British band had ever done, which is to break the US pop music market. With Ed Sullivan. I read somewhere that the Ed Sullivan Theater held approximately 700 seats, and over 50,000 young people applied to get tickets for that first Beatles show. One of the iconic songs of the Beatles is Yesterday, sung by Paul McCartney and largely written by him, but collaborated with all the other Beatles. It's in 1965 that they released this important song, and its ballad quality and slow tempo was quite unique not only for other British invasion bands, but the Beatles at the time. Much of their music had been upbeat, danceable, tap your toe to kind of music, and to slow it down and to become very serious in a song like Yesterday was unusual. It is the most covered song in popular music history, with well over 2,200 versions that have been recorded. False time. See if you remember some of the details from the previous slides. The Beatles were innovative in writing their own songs. True or false? That is certainly true. That's one of the reasons that helped them stand out among all the British invasion bands, is they had a very talented ability to write great songs. The Beatles never had any other name for their band. True or false? That's false. The very first part of this presentation, I introduced them as the Quarrymen, which is one of their previous names. They were also briefly called the Silver Beatles, Johnny and the Moondogs for a brief time, and then they settled on the Beatles ultimately. That's a false statement. So please select one of the video packages that has Beatle music and enjoy some of the songs of the Beatles.